let's start off by teaching people how to interrupt. Now, the goal is the goal of the week.
I'm
Whereas the IEP is the goal of while you're here. You know, your big goal, and then what goal will you have during the next week that supports your big goal? Your big goal is to have a business and use English to import picture frames from Brazil. That was one of my students. So I said, okay, let's make your goal what? You're going to have to rent a house here because you're going to open up a business here. So let's do real estate this week. And, you know, each of them either responded yes or no to something, but it was clear that the little goal that I suggested to them, the buzzword James McKenzie says is the function of education is to gradually, or the function of the teacher is to gradually, that's the big word, transfer responsibility for learning to the student. And so that's what this is. It's a structure for identifying these are the things I want you to take responsibility for. You're going to take responsibility for doing some writing, for making dialogues, learning some pronunciation, and then coming up with your own ideas of what you want. And so this right here is the sort of vocabulary that everybody gets into. That word writing should be up here. There's formatting. And what else do you want to learn?
I like that.
Yeah. Now, this could be better laid out. What I try to do is I'm listening to them. Those are the typical things that I'll hear from people. It could be laid out better with every vowel sound. I left some space so that I could write in when I hear one of their errors. So it'd probably be better to have the vowels and the critical THs versus, you know, the two types of TH. So then the teacher comes along and just gives feedback here. You got to work on this. And as you're hearing the person, you say, could you pull out your folder, please? And they pull out the folder, and on one of the pages, it's right at the top. So when you open the folder, it's there. So the teacher just goes down in circles. Bath, bathe. Repeat, bath, bathe. Think this. Right? And they got the two words next to each other, and it's right there. It's all on one page.
You know what's amazing about you is that, like, when it comes to, like, you have, like, the fundamentals of teaching English down also too. You're not fluff at all.
Oh, okay.
I mean that in a great.
Jeff Mohammed.
Yeah.
Jeff Mohammed. I am a channel. It's not me. I'm just a bowl. And I kick out things that don't belong in the bowl. And IPA is not in the bowl. That's another upside down V, backwards C. Why do I need to learn this?
I'm shocked you even know it.
No, you know it so you can then reject it.
Right.
Because if you don't, Argentinians say, well, you're not a real teacher.
I used to always tell my students, I was like, the rules of English can be broken only when you know what the rules of English are.
There you go.
I felt like you were ignorant.
And so you can reject the IPA once you know how to use it. Now, I can understand why they wanted to have a symbol that, lacking YouTube or lacking the internet, you could memorize, having sat down with somebody, what these different symbols meant. It would be a very clear symbol. But having an A and an E pushed together, and that means cat, you know, I'm sorry. It's an A and an E.
They came up with some different symbols. It might be different, but...
Huh. But we already know, that's why we come up with it sounds like.
Uh-huh.
So guess what? That's the next page in the book. Because everybody wants to know how, even when they're advanced, they're getting love, oven, cover mixed up with over and, you know, the OV and move. OVE can have three sounds. Move, love, and over. There should be three boxes, and you place those words. a very abstract, sequential teacher will come up with a list of 100 words that are frequently used, and we're going to now place those words in the correct 14 boxes. The concrete random learner, just as they come up, hey guys, let's go back to our box. Now, that's two different types of teachers. One teacher will be very systematic and want to go through those 100 words and get them into the right box before moving to the next worksheet. That's fine. I don't see any problem with that. I just get bored personally, and there's some students out there that said, okay, we've done this placing words in boxes 20 times. I'm ready to move on. So, you've seen the 14 sounds? Right. So, I do the 14 sounds with something like, just to introduce it, general words. It sounds like. Put it up on the wall and say, that's exactly what Marco has up on the wall. He's got 15 sounds. It's basically the same idea. He just has them in a long list. I've organized them to with an E, silent E, no E, bite, bit, pet, Pete, hate, hat, giving us a little more structure. That's all. Little pictures. That form can be replicated with a line down the center and 6 horizontal lines. And now we do the human body. And then maybe it's 3 days later we do all the past tense. To every family, you know that wonderful exercise. You don't memorize the irregular verbs alphabetically. You learn them by families, right? You know, the write, rode, written. Who else out there? Well, there's ride, rode, ridden. You've got the I that changes sound, and then the I turns to an O.
Double consonant.
Right. All these things, you start looking for patterns. That's not happy for some students. They don't care about patterns. But my assumption is that most of the students that come to us did not function in a sequential world. Otherwise, they would already know, because that's where they come from. They come from a sequential world, and they rejected it. They said, I can't learn a language that way.
Or I didn't learn a language.
I didn't
learn a language.
So presenting them with a sequential works for some students. And I have to be prepared for an Alice DuPont, for especially, forgot her name already, but the ones that fold their arms and lean back.
Who was this?
Summer session, short hair, forgot what she was going to do, but she did not want to do a project.
The French girl?
Yeah. No. Alice DuPont from Monaco got right into it. Like Serge, you bring in a pile of books. This is where it looks like anarchy or a circus. Because Serge picks up a book and he sits through an hour-and-a-half class reading a book. He's nowhere near the plan of the day that was written down, but man, he's closer to where he wants to be. Now, how do you get a teacher to feel comfortable with that? Because they have never been in a class that allowed them to take charge of their learning. And the only way I did is because I listened to Litkey. I was unemployed, and I heard the April 25th, 2005, Tuesday. It was at 4 o'clock. Most teachers, if they're probably not listening to NPR because they're listening to music to drown out the pain in their head from being in a high school or wherever they are. I was unemployed.
Or they're boozing it up at some bar.
Or they're moving on to their next teaching job and they're rushing. So they may have missed. I may be the only person in Florida who heard Dennis Litkey talk about if we don't find out about their passions, it's just school. After we find out and we start teaching to their passions, suddenly, wow, I love this internship. I'm not going to miss school because every day is different. It's different because they're shaping the curriculum to the child, not the child to the curriculum. Once I heard that, the structure of the IEP reveals itself. So I'm almost wondering, before the IEP or on the page opposite the IEP, has to be a story that shows the transformation of a teacher, me. I thought I was the source of the information, and students that were not listening to me were not interested in learning anything. And so my job was to get them to pay attention to the lesson plan.
To make them engaged, make them engaged.
They keep telling me, make them engaged.
Yeah.
Somehow I have to be more entertaining. And Fischler's pointing out, it's not how entertaining you are, it's whether you are reaching the student, starting from where they're at, rather than trying to bring the student to where you want them to be at. Just find out where they're at. I had one student, he just didn't want to do anything except, he said he was really bored because he missed his laptop. He wished he had brought his laptop. I said, what do you do on it? I design roller coaster rides. Okay. So I invested in a $30 program. We downloaded it. And that's what he did the next 3 days. And he had a team of 4 students who were his fans who said, wow, can you make it flip over? Oh, why are you doing that? Well, you need to have the right angle. Otherwise, the car will not make it up the next hill. And so he's explaining all this to kids from Italy. He was German. So I was meeting the speaking requirement, the dialogue requirement, without even going to. So I'm almost thinking that there would be this sort of parallel function. I'm not sure how it would fluctuate in this workbook, but it would be, here's how to stop using these pages. You have to know when not. The page, the IEP is only there for the students that need a structure. This kid who loves roller coaster never filled out his IEP. He's an auditory learner. He doesn't write things down. His handwriting was atrocious. I don't think he liked his handwriting. He has no written evidence that he was there. But he has 14 videos where someone else said, oh good, can you show me how you do this? And so he was narrating to a video how he was making his roller coasters. Now, how do you assess someone like that? Where's the written test? Well, you either force the kid to do a standardized test of something that he obviously had not been exposed to, because while I've been teaching the rest of the crowd, he's been off playing with his machine. So what often I would do is I'd just say, okay, one of the videos you make counts as your test. And if you like, I'd like to put it up on the YouTube so that people can see what you've done. So, the kid has an ego, so of course he wants people to know. And but don't use the second one because there was a mistake. So he obviously was monitoring himself in his production.
Right.
The hard part, I think, is I don't know how to structure it so that the reader doesn't fall into the idea that, well, I have to follow this format with every student. It's almost like there has to be an exceptions file. Examples of how it was filled out, and then examples of auditory learners or kinesthetic movement learners or concrete learners that, that concrete, abstract, random, sequential.
Yeah.
If there's a random person, I am sure he's not going to fill up his binder. There's a little guy named Henrik who after 3 days, came up to me and said, I think it's bad what's happening to the tuna. Now, this was on a Thursday, and I had told them all that I had decided I would not eat tuna anymore on a Monday. And then I just left that material up. I posted my video of me saying that up on YouTube, and I emailed it to them all via Facebook. So somewhere along the line, he saw what I did, and he decided he wanted to make his own video. And this was a kid who was just not interested in all. The other project was collect all the songs that you think are good, and we'll make a class song list, hit list. We'll download the great list. And if it's 27 songs, okay, we'll have 2 CDs. Well, it turned out there were 15 songs that they all pretty much agreed on, and it fit on 1 CD. So that became, now we have to design the artwork for the CD. So, does this only fit in with short term? I don't think so, but it needs a structure.
Are you reading what I'm writing?
No, not at all. It looks like it's a student knowledge of English upon entering school. In short term versus long term. Okay, yeah, right.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Right. It's like, once they've gotten, you can almost take everyone, whether short term or long term, into this program. It's just like, it just has to be, I think, just slightly varied. The way I had it was that after about 4 weeks with this, most students have either left and they've taken their folder, they've left their folder behind when they leave, or they've never done the folder.
Okay.
But there are some long-term students who now have this really thick folder, and I say, great, let's start the next one. I think you have new goals now because of where you are with your English.
I think
And
that
it's like they restaged their IEP.
I think that you have this, that you